you're looking to dive into topics on how to live a happier, healthier, more fit, and long lifespan, then you've come to the right podcast. Livin the Dream with me, Coach Damian Evans. Together, we will explore the topics on all things health, fitness, and wellness. Together, we will be lifelong learners on this journey to living the ultimate dream. What up, Dream Team? Coach D here, coming at you with a bite-sized brain snack. These episodes were inspired because of our obsession with snacks. We love to fuel our bodies with these little bite-sized, nutritious foods. We've also talked about adding movement snacks into your day the same way. So, we have food and we have movement, but what about our brains? It's time to add some little bite-sized brain snacks into your week. That's what these episodes will be all about. Bite-sized wellness wisdom for lifelong learners. So let's open up and satiate our minds. This brain snack is all about what to do when you hurt. Injuries, accidents, tears, sprains, strains. Oh my. I just finished an incredible book by Kelly and Juliet Starrett called Built to Move. There was this one part that I really wanted to share in this episode about physical pain and how we go about recovering from that pain. I just had a conversation with a friend who had a slight tear in his calf muscle. So painful. He was an athlete back in the day, and he still does the weekend warrior activities like golfing and open gym basketball. And he was taught, just like I was, to rice an injury. Rice, rest, ice, compression, and elevation. Now, we did a whole masterclass episode titled, Don't Ice, Walk It Off. And I highly recommend checking that out if you're still icing your physical injuries, just like I had my entire life. But there was this part in the book, Built to Move, that I just have to share. It was incredibly insightful. I loved it. And there are 10 sections in this book that the authors say that we should focus on for the most mobile, pain-free, and strong bodies that we can possibly have. And those 10 sections are getting up and down off the floor. And we talk about that all the time, how important it is to be able to get up and down off the floor without using your hands, especially for later on in life. The second section is called Breathe Easily, and it just talks about the importance of how you should be able to breathe from your diaphragm and breathe deeply and use your breath to control your state. The third section was called Extend Your Hips. Because we sit so much, your knees are always in front of your body, meaning that your legs go in front, which is flexion, and how you need to extend your hips, making sure that your legs spend time back behind you, like in a lunge or in a kickback. The next section is called Walk This Way, and it just talks about the importance of how walking in your life is just so important. Getting your knee up, making sure that you can move correctly. The next section is called Future-Proof Your Neck and Shoulders, and it talks about how we have this forward head syndrome, this tech neck from having all of our devices in front of us and us being rounded. So talking about your upper body posture. The next is called Eat Like You're Gonna Live Forever, and that's pretty self-explanatory. It talks about diet for longevity. The next section is called Squat. Squatting, and not just squatting heavy like a barbell back squat, but getting into a deep squat and spending time there. The next section is called Find Your Balance, and talking about how balance and working on balance and strengthening your balance is so important for longevity. Another section is called Create a Movement-Rich Environment. And we talk about this all the time on the podcast about setting up your environment to make it so that you move more. You're up and down off the floor. You might even be hanging from things when you walk through doorways and see a pull-up bar. And the last section is called Unleash Your Superpower, Sleep. And that's pretty self-explanatory there. And the title of a special section that I want to share was called What to Do When You Hurt. Pain, like death and taxes, is part of the human condition. It's part of the human condition, too, to be able to triumph over pain. The body is an incredible healing machine. So as unpleasant and common as it is, to feel musculoskeletal pain, don't freak out. When you're hurting, most times musculoskeletal pain will dissipate on its own. And when it doesn't usually, you have the ability to either change, modify, attenuate, or eliminate it. Moving more and being well rested well fed, and less stressed out can go a long way in making your brain more tolerant and more resilient to pain and discomfort. When you need a first aid approach, here are some things to think about. Pain is a request for change. I want to say that again. Pain is a request for change. Your brain gets input from the affected part of your body, and then it interprets that input as a threat or not, ultimately giving you the message that you need to do something differently. How differently depends, though. Pain doesn't always mean that you're injured or that a tissue is damaged. In fact, most times, that's not what it is. We define injuries as a condition where there is obvious damage, a bone breaking the skin, an ankle swollen to the size of a tree branch, or the pain is so unrelenting to a point where you can't fulfill your typical role in life. Now, it's important to note that if you can't care for your family or do your job, or you're having red flags like night sweats, fever, dizziness, nausea, or even unaccounted for weight loss or weight gain, then you definitely need to see a healthcare provider. That's a serious thing. But most of the musculoskeletal pain that people experience these days, achy low backs, sore knees, throbbing shoulders, these are usually not an injury, but rather a reflection of our modern lifestyle. It's rare, though, that people make the connection between their poor sleep, their not moving all day, their limited use of range of motion of their body parts, or even their congestive tissues. How do they not connect that to the fact that their knees or other parts of their body ache? The environment that we live in is where we drive everywhere. We park ourselves in front of screens, computers. We even pay other people to walk our dogs. Many people don't even stroll the aisles of Costco anymore. We can just get so many things delivered to us now. And the resulting disuse of various muscles and joints affects our movements and our ability. And yet, all of these factors have largely been divorced from the conversation about pain. Most people experience pain. It's no wonder that many people are running to their doctors. According to the 2015 Mayo Clinic study, among the top reasons people go to the primary care doctor is either from pain, from arthritis, joint dysfunction, or back issues. Or the other thing that prompts most visits is skin problems. And we shouldn't be surprised that so many people turn to their physicians and other healthcare practitioners for pain, even though they can't sense an obvious injury. No one tells them otherwise. I mean, think about it. If you go to, let's say, a spin class and you have this nagging knee pain, and you go up and you talk to the instructor is likely going to tell you to talk to a doctor or a physical therapist. Where else are you going to turn? The elephant in the room is that people don't seek help soon enough. They deal with their discomfort until it gets so bad that they're forced to confront it with a physician. Or they just deal with it by covering it up with pain medications, or bourbon, or THC, or anything else that will help stop their pain, or I should say mask their pain. And this is also that they can just keep continuing living their lives the way that they have. Might we suggest another solution? I mean, nothing against primary care doctors, but they aren't often well trained to look beyond an obvious injury. In fact, the doctors that I've seen say that they just don't have enough time to talk about the things that will allow them to understand what this pain is coming from. It's like the entire system is set up to deal with pathology and catastrophe, not issues of lifestyle, tissue health, movement quality, and range of motion. So when they can't find a specific diagnosis, they can offer you a means to help manage the pain with either pharmaceuticals like non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, NSAIDs, or with opiates or other pain medications. Now, if you do work out, they will also usually give you some advice to stop working out, right? They're going to say, running, swimming, biking, lifting, whatever it is that you do, it's because this is causing you so much pain that's so severe that you actually went and sought out a doctor. And the fact that they say this, to be fair, it's not unreasonable. For the person who gets real pleasure or stress relief from exercise, though, this can be soul killing. Someone that really enjoys running, this doctor is telling you to stop running. Physicians, for all that they can do for us, they have a limited toolbox when it comes to tender ankles and low back pain. But you, yourself, you actually have a very full toolbox for tending to your body's aches and pains. In fact, most of the time you can perform basic maintenance on yourself. I mean, you have the power to do simple things to make yourself feel better. So let's talk about how. Your personal first aid kit. One thing that you should know about your body is that it is not as fragile as you think. You are a pretty bomb-proof organism, easily designed to last 100 years. That doesn't mean that your body should hurt. It's actually normal for tissues not to hurt if you press on them. Pressure should feel good, like a massage, or just like pressure. But why do they hurt sometimes? Well, it could be any number of reasons. The tissues could be hypersensitized, overworked, or underhydrated. Maybe you're underslept. Maybe you ate too much pizza. We really don't know. It could be anything, but it's up to you and only you alone to follow the breadcrumbs and try to figure it out. So let's talk about upstream, downstream thinking. Upstream, downstream thinking. One of our favorite quotes comes from Ida Rolf, who developed the physical manipulation practice called Rolfing. Rolf, in her infinite wisdom, once said, "Whatever you think it is, it ain't. Whatever you think it is, it ain't." Powerful. Less picturesque, but equally salient, is another quote that we heard somewhere. Where the rat gets in is not where they chew. Where the rats get in is not where they chew. Think about that for a sec. What are we getting at here? We're getting at the fact that when a body part hurts, it is often not because something is wrong with that particular part, but rather that something is either going on below it, downstream, or above it, upstream. Let's take the most famous example, knee pain. Knee pain, for instance, could be a symptom of stiff muscle and connective tissues of the quadriceps, the quads, or the hamstrings, the back of the thigh, or the calves. Stiff quads or hamstrings could be the result of your knee pain. Or maybe it's coming from your glutes, your butt. Your body is not just the sum of its parts. It is an interconnected system in which each element can have an effect on the other. We can't give you a diagnosis via a book or a podcast, but we can help you make a mental shift. Rather than just taking pain at face value, let's go look and see what else might be going on and look upstream or look downstream and explore. You have to freestyle a bit here. One way that you can do that is to see what happens when you put some therapeutic pressure on an upstream or downstream body part. So try doing a series of contract and relax cycles, meaning that you consciously contract a muscle and then you relax that same muscle. And you do this on the associated spot in the offending position. Better yet, do them in combination with input from a therapy ball or a therapy roller. So I know that's kind of a little bit complicated. Here are two examples of how to get some soothing input into an area so that it helps resolve your referred pain, which is the pain that you feel in one part of your body that is actually caused by pain or injury in another part of your body, referred pain. One note, when you use a foam roller, don't just move up and down, move side to side. It covers more of the neighborhood, and by that we mean the nearby tissues of what is maybe the affected area. You can think of this like cutting steak across the grain. So you're going with the grain and you're going against the grain. Now, you may experience pain after long duration sitting. If you've ever sat for long periods of time, it almost feels like you've made a panini out of your butt. So, getting some pain relief after you've been sitting for a long time may be helpful. All that weight that you put on those tissues of your glutes, that messes up the blood flow and the hydration of the tissue systems. You're using a chair and you may feel pain or stiffness in your back as a result. So, here's a way to get things flowing properly again. You're going to need a foam roller while seated on an armless chair or bench. Now, place the end of the foam roller under one of your buttocks so that your sit bone is parked firmly on top. Moving carefully here so as to not lose your balance. Remember, we're not just addressing the muscular system here. You may be giving input into the fascia of the glutes and the low back as well. So keep rolling until you hit Switzerland. That means that it feels neutral, like nothing's happening. And then switch sides. Do this for 3 to 5 minutes per leg, and this is an example of mobilizing the tissues downstream of the low back and giving positional context to the mobilization of sitting. So let's talk a little bit about self-soothing painful tissue. If an area of your body hurts when you press on the tissue, the contract and relax technique can help you desensitize that area. Contracting the tissue under a ball or a roller might be more easily understood as creating non-threatening input to the brain. This involves tightening up the muscles in the affected area or the muscles upstream or downstream just for a few seconds and then relaxing them for a few seconds. In doing both, in concert with your breathing, of course, you can do this to any body part. But here's how you would do it for a sore knee. Using a ball or roller, lie face down with the ball or roller under the quad, your thigh, the upper thigh of one leg. Inhale and contract your quad for 4 seconds. Squeeze it as hard as you can. And then exhale and relax the muscle for 8 seconds. And then do this for a few rounds until it begins to feel differently. We like to say mobilize until you make change or until you stop making change. So that's just a couple examples there of how to put physical manual pressure upstream of injury or of pain in order to create change. And now the next part of this section is my favorite part, and this is why I'm really sharing this episode. It's called to ice or not to ice. There is no question. Don't ice sore or injured muscles ever. When I tell people this, people get crazy. They don't want to give up their icing, and it's understandable as to why. Cold numbs pain. Icing is always what we've been told to do. It's what our moms did. It's what we do for our kids when they bang their heads. It's always been the accepted wisdom, and yet, while icing does temporarily and effectively remove pain, it also does other things. None of them are going to be good. Just to clarify, we aren't talking about the ice baths that athletes do after training. Icing an isolated painful spot in the body is different than an ice bath. When there is trauma to a muscle, your goal should be to get it to heal fast. And the body actually has a very effective system for doing this. The first order of business is to get rid of the damaged tissues and cells in and around the accident site, what physiologists call metabolic waste. The second thing that has to happen is the regeneration of new muscle fibers and new connective tissues. The body takes care of both tasks by sending repair and cleanup crews. Only icing virtually stops that crew in its tracks by delaying the chemical signals that normally send them racing to the traumatized spot. So, with no ability for removal, the waste most often becomes trapped and the area becomes congested. There is even evidence that when your tissues become numb under ice bags, your lymphatic system becomes more porous. This means that all the waste that has been sequestered gets reintroduced to the injured site. So what you do by applying cold in the service of quick relief creates a condition where the healing is delayed or limited. Another thing to consider is that inflammation, the inflammation that occurs after an injury, it's not a bad thing. The inflammatory response is the driver of healing. It's not a mistake. The body doesn't do this by mistake. And that's one reason why treating musculoskeletal injuries with anti-inflammatories has been called into question. In blocking pain, it attenuates the healing response. And the person who invented RICE, rest, ice, compression, and elevation, the person who invented RICE, Gabe Merkin, in 1979, in a book where he recommended RICE, he no longer endorses his RICE message. And research since then has been validating the retraction of icing as well. In a 2021 animal study, a group of researchers from Kobe University and other institutions found that when mice who have muscle tissues similar to humans have their over-exercised muscles iced, it took them longer to heal than non-iced mice. Looking at the muscles at a macroscopic level, the researchers could see that it took the repair cells 4 days longer to reach the affected levels in the iced mice. Some research has also shown that icing can interfere with strength training and speed. So athletes in particular may want to give the ice packs a rest. If cold is out, does that mean that heat is in? Well, heat is soothing, and it can help with pain, especially when a muscle is spasming. Heat also increases circulation, which can speed healing, and there are all kinds of ways to apply heat. A hot bath, a hot shower, hot tubs, saunas, heating pads, hot water bottles. You can even go top of the line and get something like one of those Venom vibrating heat wraps, or low tech or high tech. It's all equally good. If your goal is to soothe pain and not limit healing, heat wins over ice. One caveat here is if the injury is already hot and swollen, you would want to avoid heat until that does subside. Now, because the sport world loves acronyms, there's another popular protocol that is now being recommended instead of RICE. And this acronym is peace and love. So stay with me here, peace and love. And this was outlined in the British Journal of Sports Medicine by researchers from Canada. Let's spell it all out. Peace. P is for protect. Avoid activities that increase pain for the first few days after the injury. P, protect. E, elevate. Elevate the injured limb higher than your heart if possible. A, avoid anti-inflammatory. Anti-inflammatories and icing slow healing. C is for compress. Use elastic bandages or tape to reduce swelling. And E is educate. Avoid unnecessary passive treatments. Educate yourself. So that's peace. And then love. L is load. Let your body tell you when it's safe to load again. O is optimism. Be confident. Be positive. V is vascularization. Choose cardio activities to get your heart rate up without causing pain. And E is exercise. Take an active approach to recovery. So, recapping, when it comes to soft tissue injuries, using RICE or NSAIDs, like ibuprofen, aspirin, those kind of things, this is undeniably outdated and ineffective. Rest and ice do not enhance recovery, but instead delay it. Even the man who coined RICE in the 70s has recounted his original protocol with the emergence of new science. The body depends on inflammation to promote the healing in soft tissue of injuries. Applying ice disrupts this process. So while acute inflammation may be a little painful and maybe a little uncomfortable, it's actually a good thing. The body doing what it is supposed to do for optimal survival. The lymphatic system drains the waste products from the damaged area, and in order to do so, muscles need to contract. Resting prevents this process. Congestion of the waste delays the healing process, which delays repair and remodeling of tissue. NSAIDs are often recommended for pain, but they also inhibit inflammation, which we know is needed for healing. So actually, Tylenol is a decent alternative for pain as it lets inflammation still do its thing. So, what should we do for these injuries? To mirror the abundance and research supporting active recovery, the new acronym for soft tissue injury is Peace and Love. Peace encompasses the rehab continuum for short-term management of symptoms. So, protect, elevate, avoid anti-inflammatories, compress, and educate. Love addresses ongoing management for optimal recovery. So load, optimism, vascularization, and exercise. Whew, wow, world turned upside down. I know. But when you look at the underlying mechanisms and how our body heals traumatic injury to our connective tissues like muscles, tendons, ligaments, fascia, even bone, it starts to make way more sense. Are we saying to never ice your injuries? No. Are we saying that ice is the devil and to never do any kind of cold therapy? No. We have to stop thinking so black and white with everything. Icing is a tool. You pull it out of the toolbox when you need it. If pain is excruciating and debilitating, then ice. If you overtrain constantly and you need to be ready for another event sooner than a light active movement can recover it, in the case of many athletes that are doing daily doubles, then sure, ice. If you are looking to use it as thermoregulation and train that part of your body, then fantastic, you're correctly using it as a tool for a specific purpose. But if you're using ice to speed up the healing process, drop the rice and incorporate the peace and love. I hope this was as insightful for you as it was for me. And you have to check out the rest of this book. It is filled with stuff like this. Built to Move by the mobility master himself and his wife, Kelly and Juliet Starrett. And that's it, my friends, for this Bite-Sized Brain Snack. If you enjoyed this content and would like to support us in making more episodes like this one, it helps us a ton if you could share this episode with someone that you think could benefit from it. You could also take a screenshot and post it on your stories and include one takeaway. That'll help me understand how to make better episodes for you in the future. Another non-cost way that you can support us is to leave a 5-star review on whatever platform you're listening to this on, if you feel like we've earned it. And if you have time to write something short, that would really help the algorithm gods show this podcast to others who may be looking for good health, fitness, and wellness information. I know that time is the most valuable thing that we have, and I am so grateful for you listening all the way to the end. And I'm so inspired by your desire to be a lifelong learner and making time to invest in your own knowledge in order to be the CEO of your own health. I'm going to be right here with you, helping making us stronger, happier, and healthier humans. Until next time, friends, keep living the dream.